Gravity Welder is a tool that does a lot of different things in this universe. So in your right hand, you'll have a gun. In your left hand, you'll have the Gravity Welder, which is part radio, part radar, part welding tool. So there's a lot of different pieces on it that look kind of confusing. But basically you've got radio, which will allow you to communicate with other players. Got the radar, which shows where, kind of like a metal detector, it'll show where wreckage is out in the field. And it also has a anti-gravity welding mechanism that allows you to pick up heavy pieces of metal and place them on your ship to reinforce it. The way that I want VoIP to work is actually just going to be straight up radio channels. So we'll have like, let's say 14 different channels that you can go to. And we're not going to baby the players. They can just go to whatever channel they want to communicate with other players. So you can hear enemy team chatter if you're on their radio channel. I mean, I want to treat it like an actual, like a trucker radio, you know? So you have a CB radio on the gun.
Kind of looks like a Zippo lighter, a stapler, and a file organizer. Like had this crazy threesome and made a gun.
There's a battery. It has a battery. That's all you need. That's all the electronics you need. And like an antenna for radio communication.
Alex, have you thought this out?
Yeah, that's why I built it like the way that it is. So you use it to place these panels all over your ship. And it will be, they won't be permanent because you can pick them up and move them again, so you can rearrange your ship however you want on the fly very quickly. You'll start with a max of about 3 of them. And then the rest you'll find either out in the wasteland or by destroying other ships and stealing theirs. And you'll be able to place them all over the place.
This is the gun all textured and stuff, which is looking super sweet. It kind of looks like, the main part, now that it's all like plastic, it kind of looks like a power drill from Home Depot.
Oh yeah, right.
That's the idea.
This is your bread and butter of this game. This is the crowbar, this is the portal gun. This is what it's all about.
This is the first ship, or hover jumpers. It's the smallest one. This is also the only ship that's going to be seated, so people can play it while they're sitting in their chair, and they can turn around in the chair. Because it's the fastest moving ship, so I want to be able to not make people terribly sick, you know. I modeled this over the course of like 2 days, and it's basically just a bunch of scrap junk that I imagined the player would have on him. So there's like he's got a cup and a sleeping bag and a Pelican case and an ammo box, blanket, canteen. It's like you got your camping supplies because you're gonna go out into like the wasteland to go find scrap metal.
What's your inspiration for these ship designs besides the artwork?
This one I just came up with in my head. I was just like, well, if I'm gonna be flying out in the middle of the post-apocalyptic wasteland on the smallest little ship, what would it be? And this is what I came up with. This wing is literally a speed limit sign. It's like a Waterworld kill zone ship. Like if you're gonna make it out of crap that you found, like this landing ski is literally a ski with a ski boot on it, and it's like very poorly pieced together. I have all the electronics working, where like I have a battery, cables running from the battery. They go to the PCU. Interestingly enough, I model fairly messy. I don't clean up interior meshes, as Nate laughs because he has to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I normally model in a way where I don't clean up the inside of things. So the way that I model used to be very bad because it would leave a bunch of mess. But for VR, it's very good because if you stick your head into something, like we can't physically stop a person's head from going through the space where they're gonna get sick. So they can shove their heads into things, and since I don't actually clean up my mesh too much, it's pretty cool because you'll actually see the internals rather than it just being totally empty. In VR, it's a lot cooler to look at geometry than textures, so the more mesh, the better. So basically, like the way that these work is I would model them first in Maya, and then switch over to Unity. This is that ship in the engine. This is what the original block out was, so I just blocked it out here. I haven't started working on the other ones yet, but you can see that they're just blocks. And Nate's going to be modeling most of them. So Nate, you're going to have to deal with my weird block stuff.
Yeah, should be fine.
You can see I have these, like, I have this ship placed in this orange grid, which is essentially our trackable area, the Vive. The outer one is the hard bounds, which basically means the maximum size of somebody's room, which we're just going with 15 by 15 feet. So like that's the reason I have the interior orange grid is so that that's our foot space, because if somebody's standing, you know, at the edge of their foot space and they reach their arm out with a controller, you don't want them like punching into a wall. So it's like if we allowed the full hard bounds and somebody's got a 15 by 15 foot room and they just like go stick their arm over the wall to shoot somebody, then they'd punch a hole in their wall. So our largest ship is 12 feet by 12 feet foot space. And this is the smallest ship, and this is basically 4 feet by 4 feet. So basically the attachments.
Oh, whoa. That's like a big plane door?
One of them is. So they'll fit into those little slots on the side.
Ah. So that's the armor. Will armor be like the main thing that you can attach? Will there be other things that you can attach besides armor?
Yep. Yeah, armor will be like the most common thing that you get, and then some of them are a little more rare, like the plane window you'll be able to see and shoot through.
Yeah.
Stoplight you'll be able to turn on. Most of them you can't do anything with, but then there's stuff like this light where you could like aim the light and turn it on and off. You don't have to buy them. You'll find them out in the wasteland. So you'll go scrap, find ship wreckages, or if you blow up somebody else's ship, then they're gonna drop stuff. Looks kind of like a flying shack.
Hi, I'm Nate, and I'm working on models and also texturing UV and all that stuff for hover junkers. So what we have here is a version of Alex's model that he created over the weekend. I believe it's for the smallest ship, and I've gone ahead and broken it down into sort of different colored groups just to kind of help me differentiate different silhouettes and materials and whatnot. UV maps are basically like taking an animal's skin off of its body, kind of like pelting and stuff like that. And it's also a lot like how cereal boxes get printed, and that it's printed on a flat surface and then eventually it's folded back into a box shape. So essentially we do that with these objects, but they're way more complex than just simple boxes most of the times. So it can be a complex project. So you'll end up with a flat little texture space that you can bring into Photoshop or another 3D painting program, something like that. And you can apply textures to it, which you then can assign to a material, which you assign back to your 3D object, and it all gets wrapped up and looking nice and pretty. So the program that I really like to use a lot is called Hedis UV Layout, and it just makes laying out UV so much better than something standard like Maya. So whenever you start out this program, you'll basically see a 3D area that you can tumble around in and orient the camera and stuff. And then you can pull off pieces. So you can tumble around this and see how it looks in 3D, and normally doesn't have these green little sections on it. But those green sections basically are seams that allow it to unwrap.
So what does it look like when it's unwrapped?
It kind of looks like this. Oh, this is really messy right now. But you can kind of see the process. We get a little square, and then these objects that were once 3D are either cut or split, and then they're placed in these little UV texture spaces. And that's essentially what we will capture, this little square right here. We'll capture a flat image of that, send it out to Photoshop or something similar, and begin painting on it. And then, like I said before, once we have that all painted out, we can assign it to a material, which then gets assigned to a 3D object, and it all wraps back up again. UVing is really boring and shitty, and there's nothing artistic about it. But it has to be done, basically. And I mean, it has a lot to deal with organization. So you've got like arm here, which might be either covered in like a piece of clothing or it might be skin. Some people like to separate their skin texture from, say, clothing, because it's easier to assign certain materials to it. This has to be done or else the character's not going to have a unique texture to it, which is an art style choice. You can totally get away without using them, but
Yeah.
it's more limited.
So here's the main menu as a physical structure.
How does that work?
Well, we need a physical space to represent our menu in the future, because in virtual reality, a blank screen isn't quite as fun as an actual environment. So the reason that this is important is because for a lot of people in the world, some of you guys included, this is going to be the very first thing that people ever see in virtual reality. This is what starts up when you start the game. So it's really important that this looks bonkers. So I'm going to spend a really long time making sure that this little bar looks as absolutely cool as possible. The bartender is currently a block. He's not going to be a block. He's going to be a bartender that's a robot. He owns this place.
Why is it up on stilts?
Oh, we're not going to get into the worms yet.
The worms.
We're not going to go to that yet. I think the idea behind this, I mean, it's obviously just the menu, but I think the idea behind it is kind of like a trading post. So this is where you would bring your salvage in between missions out in the wastes. So you could trade anything here, get water, because water is super rare, resupply your ship with fuel, and get quesadillas, obviously. It takes
Not
place
so
on
far.
Earth, way in the future though, after we've run out of water. That's
gonna
all
suck.
the information I'll give about it. Everything, there's so many things that need texturing. The boathouse needs texturing. Ship needs more textures. Attachments need textures. The tackle box needs textures.
The planning for release next week.
Huh. Yeah.
Okay.
More
Not
boats.
not release. Maybe
fine.
another DevBlog.
Yeah.
Cool.
First environment needs to be made today, so we'll worry about that next.
Kanye has seen our video and he didn't think it was very good. He didn't laugh a single time as it's described to us. He watched it and he went, in one place, you can figure out the appropriate order to do it in. Bandit was now a great time to go nutso with Obi. You've been docked one trait today.